Hello guys, and welcome back to my AWS tutorial series. Today I will be showing you how to use API Gateway Service to create an API. So the first thing you want to do is navigate to the API Gateway console, where you will then click Create API. You will be prompted with 4 choices: HTTP API, WebSocket API, or RESTful API, or a private RESTful API. In this case, we will be using a REST API. Click Build, and here you will have the choice to either create a new API, clone an API, import an API from a JSON file, or use an example API. We will be creating a new API. Give your API a name and a description. Select your endpoint type and press Create API. Here you will see your API structure and your resource/method editing section. And on the left you have your standard navigation tabs. First thing you want to do is press Create Resource and enter a resource name. To demonstrate how paths work, we will first create a resource named API and press Create, and then create another resource. We will now be able to choose if we want to create a resource based off of our API path or off of the root of our API. In this case, I will name it Test. Press Create Resource. You will now be able to create a method. You can select which method type you want. You can either have a Lambda function, an HTTP, which automatically invokes another HTTP endpoint, a mock, which does nothing, an AWS service, which automatically integrates with a service, or a VPC link. In this case, we will be using a Lambda function. Select your method type, which is the standard HTTP method types. In this case, we will be using GET. And then choose whether you want Lambda proxy integration. More on this later. Next, select your Lambda function. I already have one pre-prepared, and it just simply returns hi and a status code of 200. Finally, you can choose your timeout. The default timeout is 29 seconds, but you can choose your own if you want. Finally, press Create Method. And apparently it can only be between 50 milliseconds and 29,000 milliseconds. Okay, let's just use the default. So now you will be able to edit your method. Here you have your method request, which is how the original request from the client is parsed. It is then handed into the integration request, which parses it and then passes it into your Lambda function. Your Lambda function then passes the result into the integration response, which parses the result, handing it to the method response, which parses it for the client. In this case, we'll leave everything at default for now. Next, press Deploy API, and you will be asked to create a stage. In this case, we will create a new stage, and we name it Production. You can give it a description and press Deploy. You will automatically be redirected to the Stages tab, where you will be able to see all your stages. Open it up, you will see our API. Now, you will be able to edit throttling and caching. In this case, I won't do that. And you will see your invoke URL. You can copy it and go to your URL and go to our endpoint. In this case, is /API/test. And as you can see, it says status code 200 body high, meaning the Lambda function was successfully invoked and our API worked. But now, say you want to have a parameter pass, say user is equal to mom. In this case, that doesn't work. So the first thing you want to do is go to your Lambda function and use it. So in this case, we will do event. It is query string parameters, query string parameters, and then the parameter in this case is going to be user, and you can simulate a test fire by using the template AWS proxy. Because I do suck at spelling, I will correct myself and press deploy. Next, what you want to do is go back to resources and now go to get. In the method request, you have to add a URL query string parameter. In this case, I will name it user and I will set it as required and press save. And very important, otherwise this will not work, go to your integration request, press edit, and enable Lambda proxy. This is what passes the very nicely structured events to our Lambda function so it can access different things about the request. I will press save, and now everything is ready. Press deploy, enter the stage, and press deploy. Now, please note, you do have to give it a second, otherwise it simply will not work. But if we keep refreshing a little bit, it will eventually work. Give it a second or two. It does work, unless I did miserably unspell something or misspell something. And as you can see, it successfully worked. And now if we change this to anything else, say dad, it works. It is pretty buggy. That is AWS's fault, not mine. But if you give it a second, as you can see now, it's working fine. You do have to give it a second, but now you can pass whatever you want. If you want to pass, say, a sub-URL into it, you do have to HTTP encode it so it functions, but overall, this is a very simplistic API. You can add to this, you can create documentation, you can change logging, tags, binary media types, you can change authorizers, you can make API keys, but we will not be getting to that in this tutorial. Anyways, I hope this tutorial taught you guys something. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, and see you guys next time.